Folks, if you haven't heard about Anchor on Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Anchor has the tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. While hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Double T welcoming in everybody here and around the globe. First, we would like to raise our hearts and our prayers up to the good people of Ukraine who, I can't believe it after so long, are still putting up a valiant fight against the evil dictator Vladimir Putin. And our prayers are with you, people of Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to touch on a very controversial subject, which is the mass shootings that are going on in this country. We are also going to talk about guns, gun laws, and I am sure that we are not going to make everybody happy, but we are here to be the voice of reason, and we are going to do our best to balance those scales. The United States has suffered at least 246 mass shootings in 2022, more than there have been days of the year according to the Gun Violence Archive. The same number of mass shootings in 2021 through June 5th. We are on track to match or surpass last year's total, which was the worst on record according to data compiled by the Gun Violence Archive. In 2020 through June 5th, 161 mass shootings had taken place. In 2019, the numbers were 154. A mass shooting is defined by the Gun Violence Association as to when 4 people are killed, excluding the shooter. Here's a little recap of just what happened over this past weekend. In Socorro, Texas, 5 people were wounded after a shooter fired into a crowd gathered at a high school graduation. The police chief said that all were wounded were teenagers, including 2 who were in critical condition. In Somerton, South Carolina, 1 person was killed and at least 7 others were wounded at a graduation party. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at least 2 people were killed and 11 others hit by gunfire at a bustling entertainment district. A 3rd person who died might have been one of the shooters, police said. In Chattanooga, Tennessee, 2 people were killed and 14 were wounded near a nightclub. In Phoenix, Arizona, 1 person was killed and 8 others were wounded at a strip mall. The slain victim was a 14-year-old girl, said police. In Mesa, Arizona, 2 people were killed, 2 others were wounded. Not sure what the circumstances were on that one. As with the following. In Omaha, Nebraska, 1 person was killed, 3 others were wounded. In Chesterfield, Virginia, 1 person was killed, 5 others were wounded. In Macon, Georgia, 1 person was killed, 3 others were wounded. In Saginaw, Michigan, 3 people were killed, 2 people were wounded. In Grand Rapids, Michigan, 1 person was killed, 3 people were wounded. Let us not forget about a deadly massacre at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, which I still can't understand why a police chief was at the scene without his radio behind a wall while students were sitting ducks as officers were standing down. Let us not forget a deadly assault at a medical facility in Oklahoma, or a racist rampage at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, or an attack on a Taiwanese church service in California. Where does that leave us, folks? I don't want to get into a political argument about guns because it does nothing to solve the problem. But I am going to go out on a very short limb here, and I am going to say this first and foremost. Personally, I am a supporter of the Second Amendment, and I am a supporter of a person's right to own a firearm. I think if we dig a little deeper here and we cut through all of the bullshit, we will find out a few things together. First, let me start by saying this. Guns do have a place in society. That is a difficult statement to make in the wake of everything that is going on here, but when used properly, guns do prevent or stop crime from happening. You just don't read about that, but that is not what we're here to talk about. Let's talk about some research done by the National Institute of Justice Public Mass Shootings Database. Mass details of a half-century of U.S. mass shootings with firearms generating psychosocial histories. The conclusion is that people who committed public mass shootings in the United States over the last 50 years were commonly troubled by personal trauma before their shooting incidents, nearly always in a state of crisis at the time, and in most cases engaged in a leaking of their plans before opening fire. Most were insiders of a targeted institution, such as an employee or a student. Except for young school shooters who stole the guns from family members, most used legally obtained handguns in those shootings. As an upward trend, the project spans mass shootings over more than 50 years, yet 20% of the 167 mass shootings in that occurred in the last 5 years of the study. More than half occurred after 2000, in which 33% occurred after 2010. The years with the highest numbers of mass shootings were in 2018 with 9, and in 1999 and in 2017 each with 7. 16 of the 20 deadliest mass shootings in modern history from 1966 through 2019 occurred between 1999 and 2019. 8 of those occurred between 2014 and 2019. So you can see where the trend is going here. The death toll has risen sharply, particularly in the last half of the decade. In the 70s, mass shootings claimed an average of 8 lives per year, but from 2010 to 2019, at the end of the study, the average was up to 51 deaths per year. Other findings of the study was that 30% of the shooters were suicidal prior to the shooting, and an additional 39% were suicidal during the shooting. Those numbers were significantly higher for younger shooters K through 12. Students who engaged in mass shootings found to be suicidal, and 92% of instances in college and university students engaged in mass shootings suicidal 100% of the time. In public discourse, mass shootings are often blamed on mental illness, but research indicates that the role of mental illness in mass shooting is complicated and not clear-cut. Mental illness was commonly among those who engaged in mass shooting, with psychosis playing a minor role in nearly 1/3 of the cases, but a primary role in 10% of the time. The data indicates, however, that nearly all persons who engage in mass shootings were in a state of crisis in the days or weeks preceding the shootings. But there are warning signs. Nearly half of the individuals who engage in mass shootings, 48%, leak their plans in advance to others, including family members, friends, colleagues, as well as strangers in law enforcement. Legacy tokens such as manifestos were left behind 23.4% of those committing mass shootings. About 70% of individuals who perpetrated mass shootings knew at least some of their victims, in particularly K through 12, and workplace shooters were insiders, current and former students and employees. That binding has implications for physical security measures in the use of active shooter drills. The fact that leakage is a common occurrence with mass shootings provides an opportunity for intervention. Anonymous reporting systems may increase the likelihood of leakage, and an important area for research, threat assessment terms that intervene with holistic collaborative approach to interventions that are promising. Now, let's get down to the crux of the issue. The firearms themselves, notably those individuals who engage in mass shootings, use handguns 72.2% of the time, and 25.1% use assault rifles in the commission of the crimes known as mass shootings. 32.5% of the cases could not be confirmed. 77% of all those engaged in mass shootings purchased at least some of their guns legally, while legal purchases were made by 13% of those committing mass shootings. In cases involving K through 12 shootings, over 80% of those individuals who engaged in those shootings stole guns from family members. These findings support safe storage of guns, which I believe is a law in most states, if not in every state, although it is not a federal law, but it should be. Something that surprised me a little bit was the percentage in terms of locations of mass shootings. Workplace is the highest with 30.8. Retail establishments was second with 16.9. Bars and restaurants came in at number 3 with 13.4. Residential locations and outdoors is tied, each at 8.1%. K through 12 schools comes in at number 5 with 7.6%. Number 6, which replaces places of worship, with 6.4%. 7 would be colleges or universities with 5.2%, and number 8 would be government or places of civic importance with 3.5%. So what's the answer, ladies and gentlemen? I'm going to tell you that there is no answer, and I'm going to tell you that there is an answer, but I'm going to tell you this as I told you at the top of the show. I am a supporter of the Second Amendment, and I feel that a person's Second Amendment right to possess a firearm is their constitutional right. But I also am a firm believer that a person who possesses a firearm should possess it safely. I believe a homeowner has a right to defend his home, and I believe a sportsman has a right to hunt, and I have a firm belief a person's right to carry and conceal, as well as people who love to target shoot should be able to target shoot. But I believe there needs to be a substantial overhaul of gun purchasing process, and I don't care how much pain in the ass that this is going to be, but if it prevents one death, it's worth it. And I think there should be stronger psychological testing. I think that there should be physical classroom work, and I believe there should be a number of hours that you should be out on a range with a certified instructor in order for you to be able to pass and be able to get a handgun. So what am I really saying here? Okay? What I'm saying here is I think there should be psychological testing, very strong psychological testing. I think there should be physical classroom work and schooling, a certain amount of hours, whether it be 40 hours, 60 hours, 80 hours, whatever it's deemed to be, it should be. I believe there should be a certain amount of hours that you need to spend on a practice range with a certified instructor, and I believe that you need to go through as many background checks as a law enforcement officer has to go through to be able to purchase a gun. And I'm going to say this whether you feel this is controversial or not, I really don't care. There is absolutely no need in the world for anybody other than our military, our uniformed SWAT teams, or police officers to be in possession of an AR-15 or an automatic weapon that can fire 100 rounds in seconds. There's no reason for it. And I challenge anybody to give me a good reason why anybody that is not in any of those branches that I just mentioned to tell me what reason there is to have this weapon in your arsenal of weapons. You don't need it to kill a burglar. You don't need it for target practice. You need it to pretend that you're Rambo. Okay? That's what you need that gun for. Okay? Listen. Criminals are always going to be able to put their hands on guns, so why should we make it easy for them? There's way too many guns on the streets right now, and it's going to take 50 years to weed those guns out of society to make it safe for our children's children and their children's children to be safe. Okay? You have to make it difficult, and you have to make it a privilege to own a gun. You have to make it stringent and make sure that only the most responsible of people are purchasing guns. And if you are willing to go through the classroom and the field training and the background checks, and you are willing to invest the money for a gun cabinet and prove that you have that gun cabinet so your kids can't take that gun to school and shoot the school up, then we may have some common ground here. You can agree or disagree with me. I personally could care less. But I'm telling you, this is where we come to some common ground on the system. And in order to change the system, my friends, it's going to take many years to do because there's too many guns on the street. If you've listened to me, you know my politics. There's no need to go into it, but I will tell you this. Every one of those assholes on Capitol Hill need to wear a jacket like a NASCAR jacket and have little patches on them so we know who's sponsoring them. We want to know who owns their little asses. enough of this shit. Let's work together and solve the damn problem. The NRA should not dictate policy and politics. I'm tired of that. And I'm a Republican. But I am a smart-thinking conservative. I am what you call a common sense conservative. And I will do what is best, what I feel for the country, and I don't care what side of the aisle the idea came from. Okay? So, what I'm saying is, it's our fault for letting this happen. So there you have it. A little research, some statistics on mass shootings. You have my feelings on the situation. And if you want to add anything to this, you have the ability to contact me on the Double T Talk and Text line 24/7. The number's 413-218-2429. You can leave a text message. You can leave a voicemail. I will return your call, your email. You could hit me up on Twitter at Double T Podcast. Folks, we're available to you. We're here for you. And we are trying to be the voice of reason. And I don't think that I said anything that was out of bounds. I support the Second Amendment, but I also support cleaning it up a bit. And that's what Double T has to say on mass shootings. So, folks, if you have the opportunity to do a random act of kindness for somebody, please take that opportunity. For if you do that random act of kindness, the world will be a much better place to live in. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is Double T saying, stop and smell the roses and be safe out there.